The chosen one. The storm raged inside you long before the thunder touched the sky. You could feel it, the trembling pulse of something ancient, whispering beneath the noise of the world. It called your name, not as a sound, but as a vibration that echoed through your bones. You didn't ask for this. You didn't seek to be different, but the light found you anyway. For a moment, the world stood still. The voice of destiny doesn't shout, it arrives in silence, when your heart finally stops running. You felt the air shift, the weight of your own breath, the strange gravity of being seen by something greater than yourself. The call was clear, yet unbearable. Rise. But rise into what? The question burned in your chest like fire trapped in glass. You tried to forget. You tried to live as others do, to blend into the ordinary rhythm of existence. Yet the light within you refused to dim. It pressed against the walls of your life, breaking through the cracks of comfort and illusion. Wherever you went, it followed, and with that light came something darker, the reflection it created in others. You noticed how people's eyes changed when you spoke from the truth that lived inside you. Admiration turned to envy, curiosity became fear. Their silence wasn't peace, it was resistance, because your presence, unknowingly, became a mirror. That's the curse of the chosen ones. Your light doesn't just illuminate the path, it reveals the shadows others have buried. When they look at you, they see what they've hidden from themselves, the pain, the jealousy, the dreams they abandoned. You didn't come to hurt them, but your very existence exposed their wounds, and so they fought you for it. You began to ask why goodness provokes hatred, why purity invites scorn, but the answer wasn't outside, it was inside, buried beneath your own fear of being misunderstood. You wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe you were too much, too intense, too strange for this world. You questioned your worth, not because you lacked light, but because the world couldn't yet bear its brightness. Every chosen one must walk through this valley, the place where belief turns to doubt, where faith is stripped bare. And so you fell. You withdrew into silence, hiding the flame you once carried proudly. You thought that by dimming yourself, you would be accepted. You thought that by being small, you would be safe. But the truth is cruel and beautiful. Your silence became your suffering. One night, when sleep refused to come, you stared into the darkness of your room. It was there that you felt it, the same voice that once called you. It didn't sound divine this time. It sounded human. It sounded like you. It whispered, "The light is not meant to be liked. It is meant to be lived." You broke then, not from pain, but from recognition. You realized that your journey was never about being understood. It was about holding the mirror steady, even when others shattered their reflection upon it. The world needed your courage more than your comfort. And so you began again, not in triumph, but in surrender, to the call, to the mission, to the unbearable beauty of carrying light through darkness. Yet deep within, another question formed. If your light is meant to heal, why does it first wound? If your purpose is divine, why does it feel like exile? The storm inside you doesn't answer. It only grows louder, reshaping your heart into something new. Because before the chosen one can illuminate the world, they must first confront the shadows within their own soul. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the window, you know, this is only the beginning. The war between your light and the world's darkness has just begun. Write 333 inches, the comments. It's a prophetic sign of your divine alignment. The chosen one. The silence after awakening is never peaceful. It's heavy, trembling, filled with invisible echoes of what you've just realized. You rise each morning with a question pressing against your ribs. Why me? But destiny never negotiates. It only waits. You move through the world with that secret light pulsing inside you, yet everything around feels colder, more distant. Conversations lose their color. The laughter of others becomes noise. You begin to sense what few ever do, the invisible current of energy between souls, the vibration of truth and fear weaving through every glance, every word, and it exhausts you. Because you no longer just see people, you feel them. Every time someone smiles at you, you sense the storm behind their eyes. Every time they speak, you hear what they are not saying. Their unhealed wounds echo in your spirit, begging to be acknowledged. You wish you could turn it off, but the gift is not a switch. It's a mirror you can't escape, and the more light you radiate, the more shadows you attract. People begin to misunderstand your silence, mistake your compassion for pride. They call you detached, arrogant, distant. They cannot understand that you are simply tired from holding space for pain that isn't yours. The more you shine, the more they project. Their fear turns you into a villain in their story. You start to question your sanity. You wonder if this divine calling is just a beautiful delusion, a cruel trick of hope. You ask the sky why your faith must always bleed before it blossoms. But no answer comes, only wind, cold, indifferent, eternal. It's then you realize that faith isn't a reward for understanding. Faith is what you hold when understanding disappears. And so you walk between worlds, between truths, feeling both the love of heaven and the rejection of earth. You become a contradiction, too spiritual for the world, too human for the divine. In that space of contradiction, something inside you begins to fracture. You start to doubt not the call, but your worthiness of it. The voice returns again, soft but unyielding. It says, "The weight you carry is not punishment, it's preparation." You tremble at those words, because deep down you know they're true. The loneliness is shaping you. The misunderstandings are refining you. The silence is teaching you to listen not to the world, but to the pulse of your own soul. Every wound you bear is carving space for light to enter. Still, part of you resists. You miss the simplicity of not knowing. You miss the innocence before awareness. You remember when life felt ordinary and safe. But safety, you now see, was only a disguise for stagnation. Comfort was the cage that kept you small. One evening, you find yourself standing before a mirror. Your reflection looks unfamiliar, eyes older, deeper, carrying too many unspoken stories. You whisper to the image before you, "Who am I becoming?" The reflection doesn't answer, but the silence around you changes. You feel the room itself breathe, and somewhere between your heartbeat and your tears, you understand this journey isn't about finding who you are. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. You recall moments when you almost gave up, the night you prayed to disappear, the morning you couldn't feel your purpose, the day someone you trusted turned their back. Each of those moments, painful as they were, became the altar where your soul burned away its illusions, and what remained was truth. A truth too raw for comfort, but too real to deny. The darkness that once terrified you begins to look different now. You start to see that it was never your enemy, it was your mirror. Every shadow that rose against you was only reflecting the light you had yet to embrace. The hatred of others, the rejection, the misunderstanding, they were all divine instruments, shaping you for something greater. But as you begin to heal, something unexpected happens. The world pushes harder. Old fears return in new forms. The storm outside mirrors the one inside. You realize that enlightenment doesn't end the battle, it deepens it. Because now, the darkness knows your name. And in that moment of trembling truth, you understand that being chosen was never about being special. It was about being ready, ready to walk where others turn away, ready to love what others fear, ready to lose everything so you can find what cannot be lost. The voice inside whispers one final line before fading into silence. You are not here to escape the storm, you are here to become it. And as lightning cracks across the sky, you close your eyes, no longer afraid of the thunder that bears your reflection. The night feels alive again, terrifying, sacred, infinite. You know now that the light and the darkness are not at war. They are partners in your becoming. The next test is coming, and this time it will not come from the outside. The chosen one. There comes a moment when even the strongest heart trembles, when the faith that once carried you begins to fracture under the weight of its own silence. You've walked far now, through storms and solitude, and yet nothing feels certain anymore. You begin to wonder if the divine ever truly spoke, or if it was only your own voice echoing through the hollow chambers of your longing. You wake each day searching for meaning in the smallest signs. The flicker of light on water, the way wind brushes against your skin. The coincidences that used to feel divine now seem cruel, random, meaningless. You try to pray, but your words fall like stones into an empty well. No sound returns. That's the collapse. It doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives quietly, like the dimming of a candle you didn't notice was burning out. You start to question the purpose behind your pain. You ask yourself why a benevolent universe would lead you through fire just to leave you in ashes. You remember the promises, the feeling that you were chosen for something greater. But now, that word chosen feels like a curse. It isolates you. It marks you. It brands you as someone who will always stand alone in the crowd, someone who must love deeply, yet remain misunderstood. And that realization cuts deep. The people you once trusted begin to drift away. Some leave without warning, others stay, but their eyes change. You see suspicion where there used to be warmth. Their silence becomes sharper than any blade. And as they pull away, you start to question whether you've lost your path, or whether the path itself was only an illusion to keep you moving forward. In that confusion, your spirit begins to crack. You cry out for guidance, but heaven answers with thunderless stillness. You reach for comfort, but everything familiar feels distant. You look for light, but every flame flickers out just as you find it. Then one night, something inside you breaks completely, not in despair but in surrender. You stop searching for signs. You stop fighting the silence. You let the pain swallow you whole. It's terrifying, like drowning in invisible water, but within that surrender, something ancient awakens. You realize that faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is what survives it. Faith isn't the light that keeps burning. It's the courage to sit in darkness until the next dawn finds you. So you wait. You breathe. You let yourself feel everything, the bitterness, the exhaustion, the quiet grief of realizing that even divine callings come with human suffering. You start to see that the collapse of faith is not failure, it's the breaking of the old foundation, so something purer can be built. Days pass. The world moves, indifferent to your turmoil, but deep within, a subtle shift occurs. You notice it when the sun rises, not brighter, but softer, gentler. You realize that your faith no longer needs to shout to be real. It whispers now. It hums like a heartbeat. It's not the voice of heaven this time. It's your own soul remembering itself. And in that quiet remembering, you see the truth. You were never abandoned. You were being remade. Every unanswered prayer was an invitation to stop depending on the sky and start finding divinity within. You stand again, not in certainty, but in surrender. You understand that purpose isn't something given, it's something revealed through endurance, through the nights you didn't think you'd survive, through the days you carried pain no one else could see. That is the initiation, the silent transformation of the soul. The chosen one does not ascend through glory, but through breaking, through humility, through the realization that light must sometimes disappear before it can return stronger. As you step outside, the air feels different. The world looks the same, yet everything within you has changed. You sense that something is approaching, not destruction, but revelation. A test that will demand not your strength, but your surrender. The horizon glows faintly, and you feel it again, the vibration, the calling, the same unseen force that began this journey. But this time, you no longer resist. You whisper to the wind, "If the light wishes to burn through me, let it. If the darkness must return, I will face it." The storm answers not with fury, but with silence. And in that silence, your faith is reborn, not as certainty, but as peace. Still, deep within the calm, a question lingers. What if the collapse was only the beginning of something greater? What if the next awakening demands not belief, but sacrifice? You don't know yet, but the path ahead has already begun to stir. Write 333 inches, the comments. It's a prophetic sign of your divine alignment. The chosen one. The dawn came quietly, but the silence was deceptive. You thought the collapse had ended, that faith reborn meant peace restored. Yet destiny has a cruel way of testing what it gives. The morning felt light at first, almost sacred, but beneath its calm hid a new storm, one that would not strike from the outside, it would rise from within. You began to walk again with renewed clarity. You spoke truth gently, moved with intention, radiated that quiet strength that only pain could teach. People noticed. They felt something in your presence, something unexplainable. They called it light. They said you inspired them, but what they did not see was the cost, the endless battle inside to keep that light alive. The closer you moved toward purpose, the more resistance emerged, not from enemies, but from those you trusted. The betrayal did not come like a dagger, it came like a whisper, a subtle turning of hearts, a quiet withdrawal of loyalty masked by polite smiles. Those you had lifted began to resent the hand that helped them rise. At first, you blamed yourself. Maybe your light had become too bright, your words too sharp. You tried to soften, to bend, to make yourself smaller once again. But the more you tried to appease, the more they pushed. The more you loved, the more they misunderstood. And slowly, a realization crept in. Your light had become their mirror again. Only this time, the reflection cut deeper. You felt their energy shift. Jealousy masquerading as counsel, fear dressed as friendship. The ones who once praised your courage now questioned your sanity. They began to twist your words, dilute your truth, and when the silence between you grew long, they filled it with shadows. The betrayal of light is not loud. It is quiet erosion. It is watching the eyes that once saw your soul turn away. It is feeling the warmth of community turn to the chill of suspicion. And in that moment, you understand something vital. The light you carry cannot be protected by walls or by love that depends on understanding. It can only survive when you stop needing permission to shine. But still, it hurts. The chosen one bleeds differently, not from wounds of flesh, but from the tearing of trust. You sit alone under a sky that feels too vast, wondering if even God has turned his face away. You ask why those you loved the most became the instruments of your breaking, but the answer comes not in words, only in the wind that brushes your skin. They were never betraying you. They were betraying the parts of themselves they saw reflected in you. You realize then that betrayal is not punishment, it is revelation. It exposes what was never truly aligned. It burns away illusion. It frees you from the need to be understood, from the burden of carrying everyone with you. The path narrows not to confine you, but to clarify you. Still, anger rises. You want to fight, to prove your truth, to show them the purity of your intent. But as your heart burns with hurt, a voice within whispers. Every time you defend your light, you lower its frequency. Let the light speak for itself. War. So you fall silent, not out of fear, but out of power. You stop explaining, stop justifying, stop trying to be seen. You realize that those meant to walk with you will feel your truth without words. And those who cannot will fade away, their absence painful yet necessary. In solitude, something shifts again. You begin to see that betrayal was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to purify your connection to purpose. You start to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you no longer wish to carry the weight of what they broke. Forgiveness becomes your rebellion. Peace becomes your revolution. You understand now that the truest strength is not in fighting back, but in remaining soft in a world that taught you to harden. And that softness, that mercy, becomes your armor. But as you heal, a strange unease returns. You sense something approaching a test beyond the personal, something cosmic. The same light that has guided you begins to flicker once again, and this time, it's not because of doubt. It's because the next revelation will shatter everything you thought you knew about the divine itself. You close your eyes, and the world begins to tremble, not around you, but through you. You feel the ancient pulse again, the one that marked you from the beginning. But it feels heavier now, almost sorrowful, as if the heavens themselves are warning you that love and truth are about to collide. And as the light inside you begins to quake, you hear the whisper that started it all. Rise. But this time, it sounds like goodbye. The horizon darkens, the air thickens. Something unseen is unfolding, a breaking of illusion, a rewriting of destiny. You don't yet know what you're walking into, only that the next chapter will demand everything you are. If you feel this truth, hit like and subscribe. The chosen one, the world had gone silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't peace. It was the pause before truth breaks open, the stillness that trembles before revelation. You felt it in your chest, like thunder beneath the skin, a knowing that something vast was about to unfold. The sky itself seemed to breathe, as if the universe were preparing to speak in a language older than sound. For days, you walked through shadows, guided only by intuition. Every face you passed carried the same unease. Every dream you dreamt carried the same symbol, a flame inside darkness, flickering but unextinguished. You couldn't escape it. You weren't meant to. The calling was no longer outside of you. It had taken root in your veins. But with each step, doubt returned, more cunning than before. It whispered, "What if none of this is real? What if the voice was only your loneliness echoing back?" You wanted to believe in destiny, yet the silence of heaven had stretched too long. Your faith had survived collapse, betrayal, and exile. But now it faced its final test, the absence of all assurance. The night of revelation doesn't begin with light, it begins with despair. You found yourself standing on the edge of everything you knew, beneath a sky void of stars. Even the moon seemed to hide from what was coming. The air was heavy, dense, electric, and in that suffocating stillness, something inside you began to unravel. You fell to your knees, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. You had carried light for so long that you forgot what it felt like to rest in darkness. You whispered to the void, "If I was chosen, then why do I feel forgotten? If this is divine, why does it hurt so much?" Your tears hit the ground like rain, and for the first time, you didn't try to stop them. You let the pain pour out, unfiltered, raw. You let your soul break without apology. Then, it happened. The air shifted. The silence changed shape. You felt a vibration move through you, subtle, infinite, unmistakable. It wasn't a sound, yet every cell in your body heard it. The earth beneath your hands hummed. The night itself began to glow, not with light, but with awareness. You lifted your head, and the voice returned, not above you this time, but through you. It spoke in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the breath that filled your lungs. It said, You were never meant to find me outside. I was the one who broke you, only so you would look within. Every memory, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, they all flashed before you in a single instant. You saw the hidden pattern in your pain, the divine logic in the chaos. You realized that every betrayal was an initiation, every collapse a doorway. What you thought was punishment was preparation. What you thought was loss was alignment. You understood then that revelation isn't the arrival of light, it's the recognition that it was never gone. The divine doesn't speak in thunder, it speaks in echoes. It hides within your own breath. You fell silent, trembling not from fear but from awe. You saw yourself not as a servant of destiny, but as a partner in its unfolding. You were not the chosen because you were special. You were chosen because you were willing. The truth burned through you like wildfire. You saw that light and darkness were never enemies, they were lovers, dancing through creation, each defining the other. Without shadow, light has no meaning. Without loss, love cannot deepen. The revelation wasn't comfort, it was clarity. You were not here to destroy darkness. You were here to redeem it. Then came the vision. You saw the faces of those who hurt you, and for the first time, you didn't see villains, you saw souls struggling against their own wounds, mirroring your own pain. Compassion rose like dawn, unstoppable. Forgiveness wasn't a decision anymore, it was a natural law. You felt yourself expanding beyond form, beyond story. For one sacred instant, you were everything. You were the voice, the silence, the seeker, and the found. When the light faded, you collapsed to the ground, shaking. The vision left you raw but whole. You understood that this was not an ending, it was a beginning disguised as surrender. You were no longer walking toward destiny, you had become it. But before peace could settle, a final whisper reached you from the fading night. To carry the light is not enough, you must now speak it. The words struck deep. For so long you had hidden, healed, and endured in silence. Now, the divine was asking you to reveal what it had taught you, to awaken others, to become the voice that once called you. The revelation was both gift and burden, because truth, once known, demands to be lived. You rose with trembling hands, your heart a storm of fire and grace. The horizon glowed faintly with the first trace of dawn. You knew what awaited you beyond that light: judgment, misunderstanding, resistance. But you also knew something greater. The darkness was no longer something to fear, it was the proof of your purpose. The night of revelation had ended. The dawn of responsibility had begun. Write 333 inches the comments. It's a prophetic sign of your divine alignment. The chosen one. You awaken not to sound, but to presence. The world feels alive again, as though the air itself is aware of you. Dawn spills through the horizon like liquid gold, quiet yet absolute. You stand in its glow, trembling not from fear, but from the recognition that something within you has changed forever. The voice no longer speaks in whispers, it speaks through you. You've crossed through every shadow, every silence, every betrayal. You've faced the collapse of faith, the fracture of trust, the unraveling of self. And now you stand between worlds, no longer who you were, yet not quite what you will become. This is the threshold of rebirth, where endings dissolve into beginnings. The light returns not as glory, but as grace. It does not blind or demand, it simply is. You feel it flow through your veins, quiet and infinite, reminding you that power was never something to possess, it was something to remember. The divine was never outside of you. It was waiting, patient, hidden beneath the rubble of everything you thought you had to be. You look around and notice how the world has changed, not because it truly has, but because your eyes have. The people who once doubted you are still there. The chaos still hums. The storms still come. Yet none of it holds power over you anymore. The same wounds that once controlled your steps now serve as proof of your transformation. You no longer fear the darkness because you've seen what it hides awakening. You walk among them quietly now, not as a savior, but as a reminder. Your light no longer shouts, it hums. It moves through gestures, through compassion, through the way your eyes meet another's with understanding instead of judgment. You've learned that enlightenment was never about rising above others. It was about sinking deep enough into yourself to love them as they are. The world begins to test you again. Of course, it always will. Shadows try to reclaim the ground they lost. Old fears return wearing new faces. The past whispers that maybe nothing has changed. But this time, you listen differently. You hear the fear beneath the anger, the longing beneath the hate. You understand that everyone fights the same battle, just on different sides of the mirror. And so you become the bridge between light and dark, between heaven and earth, between what was and what could be. You move through the noise with the calm of one who has seen both the wound and the cure, and realized they are one and the same. But even as you carry peace, you feel the weight of responsibility. The revelation was not the end, it was the beginning of your task. To speak the truth, to awaken others, to be the voice that breaks silence without demanding belief. You remember the whisper that closed your revelation. To carry the light is not enough. You must now speak it. At first, you hesitate. You fear the old rejection, the familiar misunderstanding. But this time, something inside refuses to stay small. You've learned that hiding your truth is its own form of betrayal. And so, you begin to speak not with arrogance, but with certainty. Your words are no longer yours. They move through you like wind through trees, guided by something unseen but undeniably real. Some will hear and awaken. Some will resist and turn away. But you finally understand your duty is not to convince, it is to shine. The light you offer is not a command, it is an invitation. The world will either open to it or retreat from it, but either way, your role is fulfilled. You start to see that the chosen ones were never meant to be worshipped. They were meant to remind others of their own light. Every soul carries a spark. Every heart holds the same divine rhythm. You were simply the first to break so that others could see that the breaking is sacred, that pain is not punishment, it's passage. And as you walk onward, you begin to notice a shift in the air. People no longer drain you. Their energy no longer weighs heavy. Instead, your light starts to awaken something dormant in them. A spark meets a spark. A chain reaction of remembrance begins. You realize that this is how the world heals, not through grand miracles, but through quiet hearts choosing to rise. You look up once more at the sky. The same sky that once terrified you now feels like home. You finally understand what it means to be chosen. It was never about being above the world. It was about being of it, yet not consumed by it. To stand in the fire and not burn. To walk through shadow and not lose sight of dawn. The journey is not over. It never will be. Because awakening isn't a destination, it's a rhythm, a cycle, a continual unfolding of the divine within the human. There will be new storms. There will be new nights. But now, you no longer fear the dark. You carry the sunrise within you, and as you step forward, the voice returns one last time, no longer distant, no longer commanding. It simply whispers, "Well done. Now, go and remind them who they are." The horizon blazes with color, a spectrum of endings and beginnings intertwined. You walk toward it not as the lost, but as the luminous. You are no longer seeking the light. You are the light. If your heart feels this truth, breathe it in. You have been chosen, too.